Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the A segment of episode 41 of The Loud House, Back Out There. We begin this segment at Royal Woods Elementary School, where Lincoln, Clyde, and the redheaded trio are all in gym class right now, and they're all on the same team for a dodgeball game. In order to minimize the chance of them being hit by dodgeballs, Rusty Spokes suggests that they get into snake formation, which is them standing in a vertical line and just simultaneously moving back and forth to avoid the dodgeballs. They also try to make plans for after school, but Lincoln says he can't make it because he has something to do. Clyde is concerned because Lincoln hasn't been hanging out with Clyde and the redheaded trio all week apparently, but Lincoln says that what he has to do is important, but he wishes his friends a fun time all the same. And when the whistle blows, symbolizing the end of class, it seems like it's also the last class of the school day for them. And after Lincoln quickly leaves, Clyde and the redheaded trio try to figure out what they should do because they're concerned about Lincoln. Liam actually gives a very reasonable suggestion that they just respect Lincoln's privacy and let him do whatever it is he needs to do. But Clyde insists that they should spy on him and see what's happening. So later on, sometime after school, Clyde, Rusty, Zach, and Liam are all in some nearby bushes, and they see that Lincoln is waiting outside of what was originally the Santiago house. Apparently, no one has taken residence there after the Santiago family left. And Clyde is pretty quick to think that Lincoln is still hung up over Ronnie Anne having left, as shown in the events of Relative Chaos. He refers to it as post-breakup blues, or P.B.B. for short, although apparently that can be an abbreviation for several things. And Clyde's read about it in the pamphlets at Dr. Lopez's waiting room. The waiting room where Dr. Lopez's office would be. And Clyde decides that they should try B.B.P, the opposite, which is supposed to help with P.B.B. So their first suggestion, or their first course of action, I should say, their first course of action is to take Lincoln out for a boys' night out. Although it's not really much of a night out because the sun's still up. Although Liam did say he has to be back home before dark, so that's probably what they're referencing. But before they actually have this, spend this boys' gathering event, Rusty actually wants to get them some new threads, as he puts it. Turns out his dad his dad works at a place where you can rent tuxedos or suits, or I guess whichever the differences between those are. Someone probably knows the differences better. But in any case, it's white formal wear that they're all gonna wear now. And Rusty's dad, we actually do get to meet him. He's voiced by Richard Horvitz, and well, he tells them to have fun and to just bring the suits or tuxedos back by the end of the day when they're all done. But he says don't make a mess of them, or else they'll have to clean it. They're gonna have to spend a lot of time cleaning them out. So Rusty, of course, is very persistent about protecting the tuxedos or the suits. Unfortunately for Rusty, though, he's quite a nervous wreck about it because They go to Gus's games and grubs, and they happen to eat very messy food. So Rusty's very persistent that they use napkins. Although while they're there, there's a lot of stuff that apparently reminds Lincoln of Ronnie Anne, or might potentially lead to Lincoln being reminded of Ronnie Anne. Such as a song's playing on the jukebox, which is apparently Ronnie Anne's favorite song. The waitress brings up something about all sorts of desserts that deal with romance in some way. And, there's a wrestling going on in the TV at the arcade. It's apparently Ronnie Anne's favorite wrestlers on at the time. So they try to do a montage. They actually outright say they're going to do a montage. And sure enough, they do. We do have a montage of them going about the town, doing all sorts of activities. Lincoln says that it was a fun time, but he does have to get back to doing what he was doing originally. So he rushes off to still wait outside the Santiago's original home for who knows what reason. And so Clyde and the redheaded trio decide another course of action. They're hoping that if Lincoln spends some time around another female, that it'll help him get over his feelings of being hung up about Ronnie Anne being gone. And so we do get to meet a few new characters actually through this phase. First, they try to have Lincoln meet up with a friend of Zach's named Renee, who it turns out she's an Ace Savvy fan as well, and Lincoln and Renee actually do get along with each other really well. But then they both stumble upon a comic of Ace Savvy's that neither of them own, and it's the only copy in the store at the time, so they do get into a bit of a fight over the comic. Next, they try to have Lincoln meet with Liam's cousin, Hattie, and like her cousin Liam, she's voiced by Lara Jill Miller, Lisa's voice artist, and she's apparently into science fiction, the science fiction genre, and unfortunately, though, she gives away a lot of spoilers about the movie that they're currently watching, and the rest of the audience at the movie theater, they are not happy about it, to say the least. And they then request Rusty to try and find a female for Lincoln to hang out with, but Rusty doesn't really have any, he admits he doesn't really know anyone, and because of their insistence, he ends up trying to arrange for his piano teacher to arrive. It's not mentioned in the actual segment, but the credits reveal her name to be Tina. So afterwards, they happen to run across, they happen to see, in one of the parts of the mall, they see a girl who's practicing karate, and the credits just call her Karate Girl, and she's voiced by Jessica DeSico, Lynn and Lucy's voice artist, as well as Zach's voice artist. So they decide the Karate Girl has a personality similar to Ronnie Anne's, so maybe that'll do the trick. But, well, Lincoln's not really good at the sparring that the Karate Girl insists on doing. So Clyde and the redheaded trio then try one last attempt. Send Lincoln somewhere so he can relax in paradise, essentially. But places like Hawaii are out of their budget, not within their something they can afford. So they try Hazeltucky Hotel. Yeah, it's the Hazeltucky Hotel and Water Park. And when they try to put Lincoln on the bus there, he questions what the occasion is, and they eventually confess that it's supposed to help Lincoln get over his P.B.B. for Ronnie Anne. But Lincoln tries to clarify that he doesn't miss Ronnie Anne, but she only requested him to hang out at around her original house for something. But they don't really listen to him, and they just push him on the bus, and it goes off. The bus goes. But when they pushed Lincoln onto the bus, he dropped his phone, and they see that Ronnie Anne is trying to call him, so they end up answering the call and trying to tell Ronnie Anne not to mess with Lincoln's feelings. But Ronnie Anne clarifies to them that he was waiting outside of her old house because she wanted him to get a package for her that she was expecting that was sent there. Realizing that they jumped to conclusions a little too fast, Clyde and the redheaded trio get into snake formation, and they go to try and get Lincoln off the bus before it reaches its destination. And later on, Lincoln's in his room talking to Ronnie Anne through video chat, and so yeah, he made it out of there all right. And Ronnie Anne finds it surprising how that all happened, and she thinks that Lincoln might have been furious with them, but Lincoln says he concedes that his friends did mean well, they had good intentions, and they're kind of suffering in a sense because, oh, that's right, it was after they hung out with each other, but before they went to the mall to arrange for Lincoln to meet with some females, what happened was some birds left a mark, we'll say. Let's just leave it at that on the suits. Or at least, yeah, Clyde and the redheaded trio's suits or tuxedos. So we do see that they have to clean up the mess that the birds left behind while Rusty's dad is watching them with a glare. And Lincoln confirms the package did made it to the old Santiago house safe and sound. And Ronnie Anne requests Lincoln to open it for her, since the suspense is getting to her. He does so, but what's inside is a spring-loaded pie to the face. It turns out this was a prank Ronnie Anne pulled. She admits she had to pay $25 for it, but she thought it was worth the price, and she says goodbye to Lincoln. Lincoln, though, took it pretty well, all things considered. He just laughs it off, and he does admit to the audience, this is the final scene of the segment, he admits to the audience that Clyde and the redheaded trio were right. He does miss Ronnie Anne. So here we go. This was the first segment of Ronnie Anne. Yeah, the first segment Ronnie Anne appeared in after the events of Relative Chaos, where the big status quo change happened, where Ronnie Anne, Bobby, and Maria are now living with their extended relatives, the Casagrande family. And she only appeared towards the end of the segment. But before we get to that, why don't we talk about some of the other parts of the segment that stood out? For one thing, this was the second segment where none of the Loud Sisters appear whatsoever. The first time was The Old and the Restless, where Lincoln hung out with Albert, his grandpa. This time around, Lincoln was hanging out with his inner circle of friends. And interestingly enough, when you actually, having watched the segment again recently, I guess you could really say that this segment was really more Clyde and the redheaded trio were more the viewpoint characters for this segment rather than Lincoln. And funny enough, it did remind me a little bit of another Ronnie Anne segment, her first appearance, Heavy Metal actually, where other characters had well-meaning or good intentions for Lincoln, but it ended up causing some complications. In this case, Clyde and the redheaded trio thought that Lincoln was missing Ronnie Anne, and they did want to help to cheer him up. Now, yeah, they did jump to conclusions. They probably should have left well enough alone, as Liam suggested near the beginning of the segment, but at the same time, Lincoln did recognize that they did mean well. They had their hearts in the right place, and I think the segment made that very clear. It portrayed them in a sympathetic light. They really did want to help their friend, and it was heartwarming to see that they really did care about Lincoln, even if, yeah, it ended up backfiring in a few ways. Now, the one of the nice things I liked about this segment was we got to meet some more family members for some other characters besides the main families, where the Loud family, of course, is the main family, but the Santiago family and the McBride family are also probably the major families in the show. Well, we got to meet relatives from other characters. In this case, we got to meet Rusty and Rocky's dad, and I should mention the credits list him as Rusty's dad rather than Mr. Spokes, so it's not entirely clear, again, if Spokes is really Rusty's last name or if that was just part of his biker code name from Hand Me Downer. So, yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up. So, again, it's not explicitly clear if Spokes is really Rusty's last name, although, yeah, for the time being, I'm going to go along with the idea that, yeah, Mr. Spokes, I'll just call him that, unless the show explicitly says otherwise. And we also got to meet Hattie, Liam's cousin, and yeah, her spoiling the movie while people were trying to watch it. I could relate to that. I had a relative who gave away the Hunger Games when I was trying to watch the movie. So I could sympathize with Lincoln and the other moviegoers. Although, to be fair, Hattie didn't seem to be malicious about it. She just didn't seem to... She kind of just seemed a little out there about not realizing other people may not have seen the movie yet. So, again, I didn't mind Hattie. It was more like unintentionally... she unintentionally ruined the movie for people, but yeah, it was nice to see another relative for another character, and it wasn't a sibling this time around, but yeah, a cousin. I mean, we did get to meet Bobby and Ronnie Anne's cousins, but yeah, it was nice to see other characters have their cousins appear too. And Renee was also, she seems to be a pretty popular character from what I've seen because, well, like Lincoln, like Clyde, and like Wilbur Huggins, Renee is a fellow Ace Savvy fan. And I know some people were bummed out that she and Lincoln ended up getting into a fight, but, well, who knows? Maybe they can patch things up and we can have a segment where Lincoln and Clyde hang out with her for something Ace Savvy related. And apparently she was friends with Zach, so maybe he can take part in it too, because... yeah, well, it's true. We did see Wilbur Huggins was also an Ace Savvy fan. It is nice to see that the Lincoln and Clyde have a peer that's also an Ace Savvy fan, someone in their grade. So I think Renee does have some potential for some good segments that relate to Ace Savvy in some way. So I wouldn't mind seeing her return in the future. And of course, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Hattie return and... yeah, Mr. Spokes, I'd like to see him return too. Yeah, and see how his interactions with Rocky, his younger son, would be pretty nice to see too. And what else can we talk about? Oh, that's right. We should probably address the end of the segment, the big part with Ronnie Anne, since this is a Ronnie Anne appearance, and it is the first one after Relative Chaos. Yeah, she had a brief appearance towards the end, but... and I guess I should mention, that's kind of is what many people are concerned about with Ronnie Anne, Bobby, and Maria all living with the Casagrande family now, is because we have been assured that Ronnie Anne and her other relatives, direct and extended, are supposed to return in Season 3. And there was a picture floating around on the internet that did show the voice artists for the Santiago family and the Casagrande family's voice artists in the recording booth. And this was after Relative Chaos, so that reaffirms that we are going to see them again in season 3. But again, the thing that no one knows for sure is, are Ronnie Anne's appearances in season 3 going to be very brief appearances like they were here in this segment, or are we actually going to have some where she has a more prevalent role like she does in Shell Shock and Relative Chaos? And for that matter, Bobby too, because while Bobby does have a lot of appearances, again, he hasn't really been developed much as a character. And while Ronnie Anne does have a lot of development despite her limited screen time, she does have some limited screen time, and that can kind of hinder more development they can do for the character. So I guess you could say I did enjoy this segment, but yeah, I am concerned about if this segment did highlight a concern that many have, myself included, as are Ronnie Anne's season 3 appearances going to be like briefly at the end like they were in this segment. And oh, that's right, I should mention that too. I know some people wondered if maybe Ronnie Anne would get her own spin-off show, like one focusing on her adjusting to living with her extended relatives, thinking that Relative Chaos might have been a way to kind of bridge into that. And so far, at least as of the recording of this video, there hasn't been any word on if there will be a spin-off show with Ronnie Anne or not. So again, if they don't have a spin-off show, and if Ronnie Anne and Bobby's appearances are really brief, like Ronnie Anne's appearance was here, then I could definitely understand why some people would be concerned about them deciding to have the Santiago family leave Royal Woods. Although, at the same time, this segment did show that apparently no one has taken residence in the house that the Santiago family lived in. So some people think maybe there's still a chance that the Santiago family could eventually return to Royal Woods. Like I mentioned back in the Relative Chaos discussion, Regular Show was a show that had a character leave for a while, but they eventually returned. So it could happen. And to be fair, real life does have examples of a family returning to a previous location after they left it for some time. I mean, it's rare, probably doesn't happen too often, but it can still happen. So yeah, that's it was nice to have it was nice to see a follow-up for Lincoln and Ronnie Anne interacting after Relative Chaos, but the briefness of it does understandably makes people concerned if the Santiago family will get any more development, if depending on how their season 3 appearances unfold. Now, as for the for that ending scene, now I know I did see some people weren't too happy about the prank Ronnie Anne pulled, but I didn't mind it. I mean, in all honesty, it was a pretty tame prank, all things considered. I mean, Luann's definitely pulled more questionable pranks in comparison, and even Lincoln kind of just took it in stride, so I didn't really have any gripes with it at all. It was a pretty harmless prank to me. And well, that ending scene where while throughout the segment Lincoln pretty much said he didn't miss Ronnie Anne, or well, he said that more when they were putting him on the bus, but the implication that, Lincoln didn't really miss Ronnie Anne, but he finally admits he actually does. Well, it's a nice touch that shows that, again, it reaffirms how Lincoln and Ronnie Anne have come a long way from where they started off. They didn't start off on the best of terms in heavy metal, but over the course of the show, as they interacted more, they both learned some important lessons, and they formed a better bond with each other now. And it is nice to see that, yeah, Lincoln does think Lincoln and Ronnie Anne's bond has improved, and he actually does miss her. So people think that could lead into some other... Season 3 might have a segment that actually does address Lincoln missing Ronnie Anne, maybe, while this one was sort of the red herring segment. So, well, we'll have to wait until season 3 to see how that unfolds. But yeah, because this is Ronnie Anne's last season 2 appearance. Might as well address that. And so that means Ronnie Anne's appearances in season 2 was the same number as her formal, that is to say, on-screen appearances in season 1. Although, while season 1 kind of spaced out Ronnie Anne's appearances over the course of the season 2 had a more sandwiched into the middle. Like, Shell Shock was towards the end of the first half, Relative Chaos was the halfway mark, and then Back Out There was towards the beginning of the back half of season 2. And Bobby, yeah, I think Bobby's going to have, I think Bobby has at least one more appearance, if I'm remembering correctly, before season 2 ends. So we'll at least get some reference to the Santiago family, but there you go. So yeah, that was another lengthy one, but admittedly, it does deal with the aftermath of one of the big status quo changers in the show, so there was a lot to talk about. And there were other details I liked too. Like I said, I liked meeting relatives for other characters besides the main family members, and we did get to meet another character who could return for some future Ace Savvy related stories, sort of like how Pulp Friction was about Ace Savvy. Yeah, maybe we could have another one with Renee in it instead of Wilbur Huggins. And, well, we had another segment that actually didn't have the Loud sisters at all, and it actually gave focus to someone outside of the Loud family. Well, actually, 4 characters, Clyde and the Redheaded Trio, so that was pretty cool. So, there you go. That's, those are, I thought this was a good segment overall. I liked how it actually dealt with the events after Relative Chaos, focusing on characters besides the Loud family, meeting some new characters, relatives, and in one case, a friend, and, well, like I said, my only real concern is if the Santiago family's appearances in season 3 end up like they were in this segment, where if it's like this segment, then it kind of reaffirms why people might not be on board with the idea of the Santiago family leaving Royal Woods. But again, we have to be patient and see how their season 3 appearances will unfold. And there you go. There's the A segment for episode 41. As to be expected, we'll be discussing the B segment next. Take care, and until next time.